There is a voice older than language, a pulse deeper than time, a whisper from the marrow of the cosmos that has echoed through caves, monasteries, mountaintops, and forests. This whisper is not made of sound, but of presence. It does not beg to be heard. It waits, patiently, like a mountain in mist, for the moment you remember how to listen. This is the essence of ancient meditation. And in an age ablaze with distraction and digital noise, its relevance has not diminished. It has deepened, like the roots of a tree burrowing further in response to the storm. To harness ancient meditation techniques in today's frayed world is not merely to adopt a calming practice. It is to engage in a profound excavation of forgotten truths. We are not simply searching for quiet in the midst of chaos. We are, in fact, re-entering a forgotten temple hidden within ourselves. Meditation, when approached not as a task, but as a return, becomes the key that unlocks doors we didn't know were sealed shut. These are the doors of perception, of remembrance, of a consciousness that predates the ego's noisy birth. Our modern ailments, anxiety, burnout, existential aimlessness, are not anomalies of our age, but symptoms of a severed thread. The ancients did not suffer less, they simply related to suffering differently. Where we reach for control, they leaned into surrender. Where we tighten, they dissolved. In their stillness, they found motion. In their silence, they discovered the most eloquent truths. Their bodies may have worn robes or loincloths, but their inner posture was that of timeless sages. They knew something we've forgotten, that the outer world reflects the inner weather, and if we learn to still the storm within, the outer winds shift accordingly. Yet meditation in its original form is not the sanitized, app-drenched productivity hack we often encounter today. The ancients weren't optimizing, they were transcending. They weren't clearing their heads for the next meeting, they were piercing veils. They weren't reducing stress, they were dissolving the illusion of separateness. To truly harness their methods is to re-enter that mythic territory where breath becomes a bridge, attention becomes alchemy, and the self becomes transparent enough to let the infinite seep through. We are standing at a paradoxical edge in history. Never before have humans been more connected across continents, and yet more fragmented within. Our minds are arenas of algorithmic warfare, our attention auctioned to the highest bidder. We scroll not out of curiosity, but out of compulsion. Silence feels threatening, stillness feels wasted. But the very madness of this modern world is what makes these ancient teachings not just useful, they are essential. They are not nostalgic artifacts, they are spiritual technologies, forged in the fires of inner revelation, designed not only to soothe, but to awaken. There is a kind of wisdom that lives in the body before it enters the mind. Ancient meditation techniques tap into this primal knowing, not to teach us something new, but to strip away everything false. They are not additive, they are subtractive. They do not seek to give us more, but to help us become less burdened by illusion, less tangled in identity, less reactive to the tides of emotion. In this lessness, we rediscover a fullness beyond description, and so we ask, what would it look like to carry these teachings, not like stones in a scholar's satchel, but like embers in the heart? How can the breath of a Himalayan mystic help a single mother in a city apartment find peace amid chaos? How can a mantra spoken by desert sages echo through the mental clutter of a disillusioned executive? How can a mudra held by a forest monk quiet the despair of a young soul haunted by digital ghosts? This journey will not offer simple instructions or neat checklists. It will offer remembering. Through the pages ahead, we will walk not only through techniques, but through thresholds of awareness, of symbol, of practice, and transformation. We will see how ancient wisdom, if interpreted not just intellectually, but experientially, becomes the mirror in which our modern madness reveals its cure. Imagine this work not as a lecture, but as a lantern. Let it cast light on the places within you that already know, already sense, already yearn. Because the meditation we speak of is not a thing to do, It is a way to be. And to be, in this fractured age, is the most revolutionary act of all. To understand the heart of ancient meditation is not to merely dissect breathing techniques or postural alignments, it is to glimpse the living architecture of awareness itself. Imagine a cathedral built not of stone, but of silence. Its arches curve into the infinite, and its altar is the breath. This is what the ancients understood. They were not engineers of behavior, but cartographers of consciousness. The techniques they left behind were not end goals, but sacred scaffolding, structures that supported the return to a natural state we've unlearned in the modern world. At the center of all these ancient methods lies a secret so simple it often evades us: presence. Not the fashionable kind marketed in lifestyle blogs, but the raw, unfiltered presence that burns through illusion like a sunbeam through fog. To meditate in the ancient way is to become a flame within stillness, aware of the dance of thoughts, yes, but no longer seduced by them. It is the art of not gripping, of being the sky, not the weather. The oldest texts, whether from the Vedas, the Tao, or the silent scrolls of desert mystics, speak in riddles not to obscure, but to awaken. They hint at a state beyond name, a knowing before language. This is not accidental. Meditation was never about instruction alone. It was about transmission. The words were meant to disrupt, to jolt, to serve as a koan that shattered habitual thought and left behind the echo of something vast. Consider the breath, that ancient metronome of existence. In every tradition, breath is not simply air, it is life force, spiritus, prana, chi. The ancients saw it not just as a biological function, but as the river that flows between worlds, from form to formless, from chaos to clarity. To become intimate with the breath is to stand in the liminal space between doing and being. This is why breath-centered practices endure across all cultures. They are not merely relaxing, they are revelatory. Another core element we find repeated across continents and centuries is the emphasis on non-attachment. The yogi in his cave, the monk in his robes, the hermit gazing into the desert, each understood this fundamental truth, that suffering is not born from pain itself, but from the clinging to identity, the tightening around thought, the refusal to let reality breathe as it is. Ancient meditation does not demand that we renounce the world. It asks only that we stop being enslaved by it. And yet, in modern life, the teachings are often diluted. Mindfulness becomes performance. Presence becomes a productivity hack. The soul of meditation is hollowed out and packaged into a 5-step plan to manifest abundance. But the ancients did not meditate to attract more. They meditated to need less. They sought not escape, but radical union with suffering, with beauty, with the infinite. Stillness, they taught, is not passive. It is not a void. It is active receptivity. It is the sacred container into which truth pours itself. In this stillness, distinctions collapse. The meditator becomes the meditation. Time dissolves into presence. Selfhood becomes a ripple in the greater ocean of being. This was not philosophical musing. It was direct experience. And it is this experience that modern seekers can still access if they are willing to sit long enough to forget who they think they are. The core themes, then, are not instructions as much as invitations. To empty so that we may be filled. To listen so that silence may speak. To observe so that the observer disappears. These are not abstract ideals, but doorways. Behind them lies the mystery every ancient tradition pointed toward, the unchanging within the changing, the eternal within the ephemeral. In this age of hyperstimulation and chronic noise, the very act of sitting in stillness becomes a subversive gesture. When we return to the breath, the mantra, the void, not as rituals of routine but as portals of remembrance, we reconnect with a lineage older than civilization itself. We realize that beneath the scaffolding of thoughts and plans and roles, there is a core that has never moved, never aged, never been harmed. And that core is not unique to mystics or monks, it lives in you, right now, closer than thought, quieter than fear, more expansive than identity. There is a sacred language that doesn't rely on words, one spoken through images, metaphors, and dreams. It is the language of the soul, the language of symbols. The ancients understood this deeply. They embedded their teachings not just in doctrine, but in story, for they knew the mind can resist instruction but is defenseless before myth. In the firelight of these symbolic tales, meditation ceases to be a practice alone and becomes a living mythos, a map where archetype and awareness meet. Imagine, then, the story of the Lotus Hermit, an old tale whispered along the banks of the Ganges. A young seeker, disillusioned by the clamor of his city and the noise in his own mind, journeys into the forest in search of a master. After many days, he finds a man seated silently by a still pond, surrounded by blooming lotus flowers. "Teach me how to find peace," the seeker pleads. The old man does not speak. He gestures toward the pond. Day after day, the seeker watches as the lotus opens and closes with the sun. He notices how the petals bloom only when the waters are calm, how the roots anchor deep in the mud, how the flower floats above the murk without ever being tainted by it. One evening, a sudden storm disturbs the pond, and all the flowers withdraw. The old hermit finally speaks. "Your mind is the pond. Your breath is the sun. Your awareness is the lotus. Be still long enough, and it will bloom." This story is not about a flower. It is a mirror. The mud represents our attachments, traumas, and restless thoughts, the necessary darkness from which wisdom roots itself. The surface of the pond is our moment-to-moment awareness, often rippled by emotion or memory. And the lotus, ever pure, ever whole, symbolizes the self that emerges when these inner waters are made still through presence. Such symbols bypass the intellect and speak straight to the being. They remind us what we've always known, but buried. In another ancient tale from the Tibetan highlands, there is a mountain said to disappear when one looks at it directly. Only when seen from the corner of the eye, in stillness and humility, does it appear. This mountain is called Naima, which means son of the soul. To reach it, seekers must climb inward rather than upward. This is a parable not about geography, but about perception. Meditation is the art of indirect seeing, of not grasping, not forcing clarity, but softening the gaze until the truth gently arrives. These myths are not entertainment. They are encoded revelations. They teach us that transformation often occurs not in effort, but in surrender, not in pushing forward, but in softening back. The lotus hermit, the vanishing mountain, the breath as sacred wind, each points to the same eternal truth, that within us lives a vast intelligence untouched by the dramas of the world, and it is through inner stillness that this intelligence becomes audible. Consider, too, the tale of the Cave of the Three Sounds from ancient Egypt. It tells of a young initiate who enters a subterranean temple seeking divine knowledge. Within the cave are 3 chambers. In the first, he hears a rushing wind, terrifying, chaotic. In the second, the wind ceases, and he hears a soft humming, like a celestial tone. In the third, there is no sound at all, just an empty, infinite silence. When he emerges, he weeps, not from fear or joy, but from recognition. The priests ask what he learned. The first chamber was the world of thought, he says. The second was the soul's memory. But the third was what I've always been. The message is crystalline. Beneath the clamor of thought and the music of emotion lies the unstruck sound, the silent field of being. Meditation, in its deepest essence, is the descent into this inner cave. Most never reach the third chamber because they flee the first 2. They mistake discomfort for misdirection. But the ancients knew every storm is a gate, every noise a veil, every silence a homecoming. The symbols endure because they speak to what cannot be argued. They are not owned by any one tradition. The Christian mystic entering the desert, the Zen monk listening to the wind, the Sufi spinning until selfhood dissolves, all are dancing the same spiral. The form may shift, but the center is unmoving. The stories echo each other because they emerge from the same wellspring, the universal architecture of awakening. In your own life, you may already be living such a myth without realizing it. Every moment of chaos is your first chamber. Every breath that softens the tension is your second. And each glimpse of still presence, where thought drops away and only being remains, is your sacred third. These stories are not just to be read, they are to be inhabited. To harness ancient meditation is not just to repeat ancient methods, but to remember ancient truths that live within you. The symbols are keys, the myths are doors, and the silence beyond them is not empty, it is luminous. It is one thing to sit in the serene glow of symbolic stories, to breathe in the fragrance of ancient wisdom like incense curling through the corridors of memory. But sooner or later, the bell rings. The meditation ends. The myth dissolves. The world returns. The phone buzzes. The traffic groans. Someone needs something, and here lies the crucible. Can stillness survive the storm? Can the sacred seep into the ordinary without being lost? The ancients never intended for meditation to be confined to mountaintops or temples. Those were places of retreat, yes, but not escape. They were crucibles of transformation, so that the seeker, once ripened by inner stillness, might return to the village, the family, the marketplace, carrying the fragrance of the eternal like a silent offering. To integrate meditation today is not to wear robes or renounce modern life. It is to reinfuse the modern world with soul. Let us return to the breath, but this time not on a cushion in a quiet room, but in the center of a tense conversation. The breath does not abandon us when we rise from meditation. It becomes more subtle, a kind of tether to the sacred when our minds wish to drift. One conscious breath, even amid chaos, can become an anchor. You don't need to chant or light a candle in the office to remember stillness. Just close your eyes for 3 seconds and feel yourself breathing. That is the altar. Likewise, consider attention. We are trained now to scatter it, to multitask, to toggle, to consume and move on. But ancient meditation teaches that attention is a divine current. Where it flows, life awakens. When we give someone our full, undivided presence, without judgment, without planning our next sentence, we turn a moment into a temple. Eye contact becomes communion. Listening becomes a sacrament. Even washing dishes becomes prayer when we do it with a quiet mind and open heart. You do not need hours of seclusion. You need moments of remembering. The mind may forget 100 times a day, but each time you remember to return to presence, it is a kind of resurrection. Meditation is not broken by forgetting. It is deepened by returning. The returning itself is the practice. In relationships, this becomes a secret art. The reactive mind wants to interrupt, defend, assert, but the meditative heart learns the power of pause. Before replying in anger, breathe. Before assuming, notice. The pause becomes your ritual, a space in which old patterns are dissolved and new possibilities are born. This is not weakness, it is mastery. The greatest warriors of the spirit do not conquer others, they witness their own storms and remain unmoved. In the modern workday, where speed and stress are currency, ancient techniques become quiet rebellion. You might sit at your desk, close your eyes, and visualize the breath as light rising up the spine, falling down again like a waterfall. You might repeat a mantra silently during a meeting, not to escape it, but to anchor into it. You might feel the weight of your body in the chair, reminding yourself that you are here, not drifting into timelines that don't exist. The ancients understood that ritual was essential, not because it pleased the gods, but because it structured the psyche. Today we can create micro-rituals, a breath before opening an email, a silent bow of gratitude before eating, a few minutes of stillness before sleep. These small acts, repeated, become sacred geometry in motion. They weave the unseen into the seen. They turn routine into rhythm. Even technology, often blamed for our disconnection, can be repurposed. A phone can remind you to breathe. A lock screen can display a sacred word. A calendar alert can signal a mindful pause instead of another meeting. The digital can serve the divine, if the hand behind the device is conscious. The ancients used stones and bells. We use apps and earbuds. But the intent is the same, to return to presence again and again. Most powerful of all is what happens when meditation is no longer something you do, but something you are. It becomes a field that surrounds you. People may not know why, but they feel calmer in your presence. Your children sense your groundedness. Your colleagues feel more seen. Your life begins to harmonize with an unseen rhythm. This is the great secret transmission of the ancients. You do not need to preach or teach. You need only to be, and others will remember by your example. To walk through the modern world carrying ancient stillness is to become a quiet revolution. You are not fighting noise, you are transcending it. You are not escaping the world, you are sanctifying it. You are no longer at war with the chaos, you are the calm eye at its center. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey, not marked by lightning or visions, but by something subtler. A softness arises, a shift. You no longer look for truth in grand declarations or distant mountaintops. You begin to feel it in the ordinary. The steam rising from a teacup, the rustle of leaves in late afternoon, the quiet between two heartbeats. And suddenly, the path you were walking outward begins to fold back in. Meditation is no longer a practice. It is your being. This is the invitation of the ancient ways, not to renounce the world, but to awaken within it, to become the stillness beneath your own name, the flame that needs no wind, the well that gives water even when the surface is dry. You are no longer meditating to escape your suffering. You are meditating to meet it fully, without armor. You no longer seek peace as a destination. You become its emissary in places that have forgotten how to breathe. All the symbols we have spoken of, the lotus blooming in mud, the breath as sacred wind, the mountain that vanishes when chased, are no longer distant metaphors. They begin to arise within you. You feel the petals of your awareness unfold without effort. You walk through crowds and hear the silence beneath the noise. You are not always centered, but you remember the center, and that remembrance itself becomes your power. We live in a world of spinning wheels, economies, clocks, trends, fears. But at the hub of every wheel is stillness. The eye of the hurricane is calm. The seed of the universe is silence. The ancients knew this, and they carved their lives around it. Now we remember. Now we return. Not backwards in time, but forward into presence. We are not reconstructing the past. We are resurrecting the eternal within the now. The call of ancient meditation is not to become monks or saints. It is to become humans who have remembered their original light. It is to walk gently in a world that roars, and to radiate peace not through preaching, but through presence. This presence is not inert. It moves like water, fills the cracks, nourishes without demanding. It forgives, it observes, it heals, and perhaps most importantly, it invites. If enough of us live from this inner silence, not in perfection, but in sincerity, we create a new rhythm on this planet, a new field, not enforced, but felt. Like invisible mycelium beneath the soil, a network of still souls touching the earth with bare feet, breathing together beneath the stars, quietly re-enchanting the world. This is how revolutions begin, not in noise, but in the spaces between the noise, in the breath before the response, in the soft refusal to hate, in the willingness to see. You don't have to go anywhere. The mountain is within, the cave is within, the pond, the lotus, the breath. It all waits just beyond the next pause. There is no requirement but willingness, no prerequisite but presence, and no timeline but now. So sit, or stand, or walk, but do it awake. Remember that every breath is an altar, every moment a teacher, and every challenge a veil that can be pierced with presence. The techniques may vary, the posture, the chants, the rituals, but the destination is the same, to dissolve into what you have always been. The world needs your stillness, not your perfection, not your certainty. your stillness. It is the most generous thing you can offer, and in offering it, you will find it blossoms within you again and again. You are not alone on this path. You walk with sages, with ancestors, with rivers, with stars, and with every breath you take in full presence, you become the very thing you were seeking. You become the silence that moves,